Hi, I'm your Audible editor, Abby West, and I'm excited to be here today with comedian, singer, actress extraordinaire, Ana Gasteyer.
Hi.
And we're going to talk about her new Audible original, the hilarious Holiday Greetings from Sugar and Booze. Welcome, Ana.
Thank you. December 21st, 2018. Booze here with our annual Christmas letter. As I sit, I am looking at the newest addition to our miniature ceramic Christmas village. For those of you who've been asking, we're still waiting for the very rare, tiny 1957-era Texaco station. And yes, it has now been 6 years. I'm not totally nuts. They have assured me it is still on back order, so I am taking them at their word.
So, in your own words, tell us what Greetings from Sugar and Booze is about.
Sugar and Booze is a narrative Audible miniseries for the holidays, and it's really a friendship love story, as we call it, between two best friends, largely in the form of holiday family letters. Those beloved, boasting, competitive, droning, nightmarish missives that we send from family to family every year. So we use that form to kind of examine a 20-year relationship between two families.
I think you already get this, but the holidays are a kind of stressful time for everyone.
Yeah, they are. They are.
And you really kind of nailed that with everything about this. Where did this idea come from you?
The idea, well, of course, I have a holiday album coming out, Sugar and Booze, by the same title, which is features the title track, Sugar and Booze. And I do think that it's a time where everybody's looking to release the gasket a little bit and let the steam off. And along with gasket release can be a lot of gas. So I think that, look, you've got tradition and you've got a lot of family, generally speaking, and you've got people who are, and you've got everything that brings that brings with it. So that brings joy and happiness and connection, and it also brings loneliness and anger and fear. So it's definitely like the Rubik's Cube of emotions, the holidays. So I think for me, those holiday letters to me are kind of encapsulate what's kind of the best and the worst about the holidays. It's both this deep religious hyper connection to tradition, because we all feel that we should be doing it a certain way. And of course, the holidays themselves are traditions and they are rituals. And so people can get really locked into those strictures and not feel a lot of flexibility around it. It's also the one time of year that people often reach out and kind of represent where they've been if they've lost track of other family members or friends. And so it's a way to kind of encapsulate quickly in those holiday letters the highlights. And what happens when people start to talk about their highlights is they start to brag and they start to panic and they want to put on the prettiest face. And in the post Martha Stewart era, we really, we've really gone for it in a way that is hilarious to me. So I kind of wanted to play with that idea of like, what do we brag about and what are we ashamed of and what are we not saying in what we're saying in every holiday letter. And it's kind of impossible not to find comedy in it.
Do you have any personal experience with those holiday letters?
Yeah, I mean, my own family doesn't do one. I have plenty of extended family that does them, and I personally went through sort of the multiple stages of the relationship with the holiday greeting after I had my own kids, which started with like the perfect, beautiful, all but hand calligraphed letter with the most attractive pictures of the babies, all the way down to the descent through to the email and the jib jab where you're just too exhausted to even deal with it. To one year I actually sent just a postcard with a pre-printed message. So I have a lot of experience on the personal level because you really, we're all living very busy lives these days. Most households have two working parents, people coming and going, and so just the very idea, I think for mothers in particular and household managers, is this sense that you have to do it all, and you have to do it all with a big fat smile on your face, right. And you have to make sure that your children look attractive. Mm-hmm. So it's this kind of it's so much pressure, and the results are ultimately usually the result of a lot of internalized pressure and panic and a sense of, not doing it as well as Martha would.
Right. It's all got to be perfect.
It's all got to be perfect.
Until that year where you're just happy you got it
Right.
out.
So you automatically have a setup, right? It's like weddings. There's a reason that we have comedies are often in these ritualized systems, because there's this idea of failure around every corner. And I know that feeling, that New Year's, that Christmas Eve panic, the swearing in the basement as somebody's trying to build something rapidly before somebody wakes up.
Well, you use this device to great comedic effect to show how friends can grow apart over the years,
Yes.
and how it can take something sort of extraordinary for them to remember why they're friends. Why was that important to you to show in this?
I think that so much, particularly of American culture, because we are such a sort of, migrant culture. So many people I know move away. They head off to college. They head off to seek their fortune wherever. My family's all over the country. I have so many friends who live that way. I think as a result, a lot of us live with found family around us, and we discover our communities, and those people become incredibly important to us. So I wanted to kind of examine how we work at those friendships and how we let them go, and what we can forgive and what we can't, So it ended up being a little bit almost more dramatic than we expected. And I did, this movie Wine Country earlier in the year with my friends from Saturday Night Live, and it's very much about female friendship. And so I've been thinking a lot on that topic, and it's just like everything else. It takes work. Good friendship takes work, and it takes, like I said, forgiveness and compromise too. We can't always be everything to everyone. So it's finding out which battles you want to pick. And Maya Rudolph plays Sugar. I play Booze, the title characters, and of course we have such a dear friendship anyway that it was such a natural thing to explore with her too, comedically and emotionally. She can really bring the sweetness to it as well.
And you have a comfort level leading into the emotion part.
100%. Yeah, we definitely have so much shorthand. Likewise, my colleague Mona Mansour, the playwright that I wrote it with, we've been friends for 20 years. We wrote sketches together at the Groundlings, which is now a very accomplished playwright in New York. Doesn't even really focus on comedy as much anymore. But again, to have a dialogue about friendship and a shorthand where you can kind of finish each other's ideas and jokes. It was really, really fun.
So we're going to get a little deep and ask you...
If I haven't gotten too deep
this
already.
Is really deep.
Jeez.
This is deep. We're going to go deeper.
Oh, wow.
Are you trying to make a statement about sort of the Instagram culture that we have, where everything needs to be glossy and perfect and we can't show faults?
Well, I'm going to credit you with that insight. But yeah, I think I do think that we are obsessed with, with how we appear. And it's not really what matters, is it? And I think the characters both grapple with it in different ways. I think one of the characters really cares about how it all comes across, this sort of pristine, version of the perfect decor and the perfect celebrations and the perfect food at the perfect party. And I definitely have felt that pressure. And it's unsustainable. I think, I think you burn yourself out, and you kind of reach this point where you kind of, I remember my mom being like, "I'm canceling Christmas," because there's this feeling of like, the pressure is so high to deliver not just like, the gifts and the dinner, but then the huge, the holiday party, the open house, the attend all the sings, make sure the teacher's gifts are good. We do take on an enormous amount. And I remember running into a female friend on the street at Christmas time. It had been a particularly busy work year for me and for my friend. And she was like, "I don't understand how we're supposed to do all of this all year long." And then she goes, "And then we have to put on the Christmas road show." And it's sometimes this feeling that it's just like, it isn't. It's unsustainable. And Instagram culture definitely makes you feel worse about that, because it's impossible to not have those moments of accomplishment and not want to Instagram them immediately to post them,
and document it.
And document it, right, and sort of prove to people, like, look how good the ham is that I made. I definitely think it's something we struggle with. It's funny because the other part of that, in the result, and what you're talking about, I think, in this particular series, is the characters are very beholden to the old-fashioned tradition of the letter and of sending out the letter, which obviously is becoming, a dead art. The idea of the Christmas card, and I think in some ways it's sort of charming in its own old-fashioned way. Now I actually get really excited when I get a card in the mail at Christmas time, and we have a little thing where we hang them up because there's something so sweet, and there's such genuine effort that went into somebody licking a stamp and putting, addressing an envelope. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. This is where we are. That is an absolute
Yeah.
thing. You really nail that whiff of desperation, despair. Well, less so desperation than despair that both of the ladies have in these letters. But I know that's not what you really want to leave people with.
This is a hilarious episode, miniseries about despair.
No, but they're painting these wonderful pictures, and you start to see the cracks in the foundation. You're like, as they're trying to one up each other, and nothing to say.
A lot of it is drawn from, like I said, all of the different. Not to get too academic about the whole thing, but particularly women in American households now are there are all these studies that show that they're working harder than ever, and none of their household work is reduced. So we're just having to feel more perfect in more ways than we ever have before. And I think that these characters kind of cover all of those angles. It's really hard raising lots of children and being married and having a job all at once, and so they both have sort of extreme. Those are they're extreme examples. I mean, one of the characters lives basically in chaos at all times. And by the way, we all know all of those families. I have a million friends with just that family where the kids are always injured. Or something's broken or an appliance is gone or whatever. And then the other one sort of lives in a life of which we also know that just like hyper control, the perfect house. The Christmas village is a very big thing, part of the story, and kind of maintaining this idea of perfection at all times, which is really, they're both impossible realities to maintain.
They really are. But you want to leave people with kind of a sense of hope, it feels like, when you get to the end of this, that you really are left with that. Why was that important to really layer in
Because
there?
I think that admitting our flaws, I mean, that's obviously what I've always loved about comedy and my character work at SNL. It's like what we used to call joyful losers, sort of the sense of optimism, I can't help myself, and of connection. I think that it's not about making fun of people for having a hard life. It's about people finding that being a little human in the midst of that hard life makes it a little bit easier. Everybody's flawed. No one's going to do it perfectly. So it's nice to sort of feel good about the parts that just feel good and are happy and aren't about how they look all the time on the surface.
You have obviously superb visual comedic skills, and you lean into how people hear as a singer. How is it different for you to write for audio?
Such a fun medium. We were talking about this a little bit. I really think it's sort of it's been interesting saying to someone, to people like, oh, I'm doing when people say, what's an Audible miniseries? And it's an auditory experience, so it's very intimate, which is always the cool part. I'm also an actor who does a lot of voiceover work, so I know the booth pretty well. The idea of listening harder than you're used to listening. But then also, there's so much opportunity for comedy that in fact the camera disables, auditory jokes that are my favorite thing in the world, which is implied comedy. I did these characters, the middle school music teachers, when I was on SNL with Will Ferrell, and they're the best of all the joyful losers in the work that I've probably written. And Paul Appel, the author that we worked with at SNL, one of our favorite jokes was the off-camera kid giving them the finger. We would never cut to the kid giving the finger. It was sort of more fun to just have everybody imagine that. So obviously the Audible experience is one where you can have a lot of imagined moments like that. And you can create a lot of atmospheric potential. So there's a lot of, ambient conversation, and one of the groups of kids in these families is called, they just refer to them as the litter, and they're basically, it's just like a cacophonous maw of children, which is kind of like literally an oral pig pen, if you could imagine it. So you can't make that joke really work. If you were to look at it on camera, you would have to show kids, wrestling and, dust, I guess, flying everywhere. But it would be harder with actors to simulate that than it would be to do that in an auditory way. So I also just think musically, in writing this kind of thing, there's more timing involved, and I'm really, it's one of the things I really love about the form, because I think you can play with beats and you can leave extra air, and you know what I mean, in the storytelling, which allows hopefully for some comedy.
Yeah, it's a different way for you to play with structure, which I think it seems like you really get to enjoy.
Yeah, I think you can play with structure differently. And I think that you can trust that your audience is with you a little bit more, because they're not gonna, you don't have to cut away for a commercial. You don't have to cut away, you know, I feel like a lot of times when you're on camera, there's this anxiety that you have to cut, you have to go to a close-up, you have to go to a wide shot, and you can really easily interrupt the flow of a comedy that way. So hopefully you just have an audience listening and then listening to a reaction and making their own conclusions.
So how does this pair with your holiday album?
Well, so my holiday album is made, it's funny because I sort of set out to create the same atmospheric tone in both pieces, although they're very distinctive. I think obviously this is a much more contemporary story. This is a story about, women and female friendship now. There is a fantastic vintage actress character who is basically personifying who I believe is the person singing the record, and that's played by Patti LuPone, which is incredible, the diva extraordinaire. The record is a real throwback jazz record. It's joyful, it's ridiculous, it's happy jazz. It's engineered in order to have a great Christmas party, have it on, and make a lot of cocktails. So we sort of took the idea of the energy of that, and we invested this character, Lady Ana, played by Patti LuPone, with all of the energy of the album, and then the rest of it is just a story about the holidays and about holiday greetings.
I love it.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense to me, and it sounds like something everyone would want to listen to.
It's fun. I mean, it's the objective anyway was to have it be fun and toe-tapping and a little bit old-fashioned. And, the holidays are traditional. As much as I sort of make fun of the limits and the rigidity of it, I love it. I love the food. I love I love parties. I love throwing a party. I like decorating. I like the way it smells around the holidays, and it comes as often as, whatever. It's death, taxes, and Christmas, right?
Every year.
Every year.
Ana, thank you so much for being with us today, and I'm so glad we got to talk about Holiday Greetings from Sugar and Booze, which is out on Audible right now.